First thing is, when you come over here, you want to make sure that you unlock the sled when you use this, and make sure it's going to travel, okay? Make sure that there's nobody standing in front of the travel. Check it out if there's projects or people using the planer. Make sure that you clear the path. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I have enough room here to travel, and I do. I'm not going to hit those boxes because this is going to pass the blade all the way through it. So I'm all right. Just make sure that you guys check that. Don't get over here, start using the sliding table saw, and find out that there's some projects being stored there or somebody is standing at the planer. A few things about the sliding table saw that we want to know is how do we raise and lower it? It's really complicated because it has a picture on here where the arrow's going up and the arrow's going down. So that must, and it's got a blade there, so that must mean that this is what we use to raise and lower it. So it's the same as a table saw. This should be snug. We lefty-loosey, pull the handle out, and we raise or lower the blade. We want that blade to be about 1/4 of an inch above the work surface. Once we have the elevation set, we can go ahead and snug these knobs up. Do not over tighten these knobs. This changes the angle. Make sure it's at 0. You would just simply loosen this, pull this out, and change it if you want to do a bevel or a miter. The sled on here, the cross-cutting sled, has 2 stops. When you get ready to use one of these stops, I need you to use 2 hands on it. You just simply lefty loosen, don't over tighten these, and these should, if they haven't been played with, they should just slide, pick up one end. You can move it wherever you want, set it, and then you tighten it. These have been played with because idle hands of little teenage boys love to do that. They see knobs and levers and they like to loosen and tighten them. If you over loosen these, they will come out in your hand. Please don't do that. It's just a small, this is tight, not moving, that's loose, and now it moves. That much energy is required to tighten and loosen them. Okay, so you would use those if you were doing, let's say if you wanted to do doors, or if you wanted to make a lot of cuts that needed to be exact for cross cutting. Now on the safety test, it says never use the carriage anytime that the width of the board is narrower than the length of the board. Yeah, that's within reason. I mean, if you had like an 8-inch board, we talked about it earlier, and you wanted to take an inch off of it, you wouldn't put it up against there. If it was, say, 7 feet long or 84 inches long, you wouldn't want to put a 7 or an 8-inch wide board here and try and just rip an inch off. You'd want to use the rip fence. Same thing is true if you wanted to cross-cut a board. You can't have a board trapped between a spinning blade and a rip fence. So if you're cross-cutting using the carriage, you simply loosen these levers. Don't over-tighten them. Okay, slide this back till it hits the stop. You'll feel it stop. Okay, and then you just push down on here because the weight of this cantilever, this fence, will bring this up a little bit. And if you tighten it there, and you're doing, especially if you're doing 1/4 inch plywood, it can go underneath there. So lift this down, push down, snug this up. That's all you need to do. Now to loosen and slide this thing, you're going to notice that this is a very precise piece of equipment. Not a lot of over tightening is required on this piece of equipment. You loosen this. If you're not going to use it, you're going to use it in a rip fence manner. You're going to slide it, bring it back to what's close to being flush to the back. Snug it up that much. It's tight. It's not moving. To move the rip fence left and right, you have a couple options. Down is locked, not going to move, and center all the way to the top is going to be a fine adjust, a real micro adjust on this knob, and if you put it to the center, it'll move with just a fingertip. Don't try and move it out here. If you try and move it out away, it just binds up on you. So you just want to move it back and forth right here at the base. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate what we're going to do here. Is we're going to go ahead and rip an edge from this sheet, try and get rid of any of these defects. I'm going to line it up and make the rip, then I'm going to set the rip fence to 16 inches, and we're going to go ahead and make the cuts. Now, if I was going to set this up to make 24-inch long panels, which is what we can do after we come out of the vacuum bag later, I would set the rip fence to 24, and I would also slide the rip fence back so when I was done with my panel, it's not trapped between the spinning blade and the rip fence, okay? When I'm done with the saw at the end of the day, when the fans are off and everyone's cleaning up, I want to make sure that I bring this carriage back to its home position. I just line up the front, that aluminum I can see right there, and then I just gently lift this knob up, just gently lift it up, and I can see that it's locked. Okay? If I'm not, there's a little wire or little piece of metal that goes into a hole that locks this carriage to the saw. And if I'm not in that hole, you can hear how it's moving. So bring it down, and you're going to hear it fall into that hole. Not yet, I guess. Right there, it fell in, okay? It's really an easy way. You would be able to see it if this panel wasn't here. It has a little indexing mark both on the carriage and on the saw. But if you just line this edge up right here, making it flush, then you're good to go. Okay, the yellow block on here, in case you're wondering, the yellow block at the end of the saw right there, that's a zero clearance yellow phenolic block. So if you want to know where the blade's going to hit, it's going to, the blade slides right next to that. That reminds me about the guard. The guard, how high does the guard need to be? Well, if we lower this guard, ideally you're like, yeah, that's really good. I'll never ever get my hands near that blade. But if I lower the guard that low and I bring this block right here, you can see what can happen. I can go ahead and knock that block off of there, and then I have a big gap between where the blade is and my aluminum fence. So we want to set the height of the guard to just where it's going to go right underneath, or that block's going to go underneath that guard. Okay? Now that's a little high. I can bring it down just a little to about right there. Margin of safety on this table saw is 4 inches, and if I'm going to rip, if I was to rip, you can see that I need to have my hands here. On smaller things that are a lot closer to the blade, I would go ahead and probably use a push stick that I have around here in the shop. Stick, it's labeled for the SCMI slider. If I was using this and I was pushing through, I would get it to here, at which time I would stop, push, let go with my left hand so that I don't take the offcut and push up against the blade, because then I'll hear a nasty noise where I'm just jamming the offcut into the spinning blade. Just push it all the way through, and you keep your hands out of that margin of safety. Okay? These have a riving knife in the back, so it does help with the cut, does help eliminate the kickbacks. These, ideally, these should always stay right here with the saw on the fence. They shouldn't be used as Darth Vader sticks. Okay? They are for woodworking and for the SCMI. Don't take this to another saw. All right, so let's see. I'm going to leave the fans off just simply because I'm recording, and I want you guys to be able to hear what I'm saying. Normally the fans would be on. Oh, there's one other thing here that we could talk about, the scoring blade. If I was cross-cutting here and I didn't want the bottom of the panel as this blade cuts, when it cuts and goes down to the top, it leaves a nice clean cut. When it comes out the bottom, it kind of splinters or breaks the fibers. It has a scoring blade on the back. You don't really need to use that unless you need to come and find me. I'll show you on an individual basis how to use the scoring blade. Because the problem with students using the scoring blade, quite honestly, is they forget to put it down. And then the next gentleman comes over here with their panel, and the blade is off, but they put their panel across here, they're getting ready to cut it, and they just scratch the heck out of their veneer. So don't use the scoring blade. It is here. If you're worried about the saw leaving a splintered end or edge, come find me and I'll walk you through the process. Any questions on the scoring blade? Okay, we're just going to go ahead and try and trim this up. It should be a little bit oversized. Yeah, it's about a 1/2 inch oversized, so we have some room. I know I'm going to set it to what width? I'm going to go for 16 inches. So I come here, put this in the center, bring this over, and right there at 16 inches. I'm going to be ripping this later, so I have it set to 16. Make sure I'm not going to hit the blade when I turn it on. The on-off button on the sliding table saw is the white buttons. In the morning when the sun comes up, it's bright white outside, it's time to go to work. When the sun goes down, it's dark, that's the off button. You understand? Okay, this emergency button is not the off button. Do not use this to turn off the saw. Use the black button. There's a picture here. Big saw blade turns it on. Little saw blade, scoring blade. So don't be trying to push the wrong button. So I just want to take off about 1/8 of an inch. Okay. Okay. So I've got rid of the fragmented edge. Now when I travel back, I want to make sure I'm away from the blade, so I pull the panel away from the blade. Now, the rule is on a sliding table saw that I can't touch two fences at one time. I can't touch this fence and that fence when I'm all the way through the blade. Okay, that's why that rip fence when you're cross-cutting has to come back. So when I'm ripping, I'm using that fence, so I can't have the front edge of my material up against this fence. Okay? My ideal area when you're using a normal conventional table saw is to sit right here and walk through the blade. With a sliding table saw, the panel's holding, the sled is holding the weight of the panel, so all I need to concentrate on is right there. I got to make sure that there's no shadow. So I'm going to stand right here, do hand over hand all the way through, pick up the push stick, and push it right through the blade. Simple. So I stand here. When I get to the end, I come, pick up the panel or the push stick, come here, and I push it all the way through. Notice I'm not taking my left hand and doing this. Okay? I let go when I get about an inch away from cutting all the way through the panel so that I don't do this. Push this all the way through. It's fine. Walk around or have one of your fellow classmates come over. Now, when you're out feeding over here, when you're tailing off, pull it straight. Do not pull it side to side. Pull it straight, clear of that blade, and then you can come over here. I have multiple of these to do, so I would just have somebody stand here. All right, so those panels are both 16. Our finished width is going to be 15 3/4. On the project that we're going for. This particular panel right now is at 15 and 15/16. So we have 3/16 of an inch to work with. We're going to have to be very, very precise when we place this and the other matching panel into the vacuum bag. We cannot have, there's very little room for error. Okay, any questions on this?